Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this video about Total War Sagas. This was announced today, and what it is essentially a new class of historical Total War on the PC. So, released under a new badge, the Total War Sagas, games will be released as standalone spin-off titles focusing on pivotal moments in history rather than on whole historical eras. So this was announced today on a blog post from the Total War website. So what we'll do, we'll go through and talk about what exactly they've announced, what we can expect, and any kind of predictions that I might have as to which era the first Total War Saga might be set in. Of course, if you've got your own ideas, make sure to let me know in the comments below, as I'm interested to hear where you think they could be taking this, or potentially any other future scenarios that might fit in quite well under a Total War Saga. I should also just point out quickly that at the time of recording this, I am quite sick, so if my voice sounds rather off, then that's why, and I'll probably split up the audio files so I can kind of blow my nose and whatnot, because having a summer cold is pretty, well, gross. So normal historical titles cover entire eras, like Rome, Empire, etc. And they also have standalone games that also focus on a single character's life, like Napoleon or Attila. But as the blog post says, there are key pivotal moments in history which don't necessarily revolve around a single character and which only lasted for a few months or a few decades at most, and such moments also tend to be constrained to tight geographical areas. And the Total War team feels that this would be an excellent source of new content for historical Total War. So, Total War Saga games will be a mix of the same turn-based campaign strategy and real-time battles, but focused down on a distinct moment. They do also say that they won't be revolutionary new titles or introduce brand new eras, and they'll follow on from previous Total War games which inhabit the same time period, or at least closely linked to it, but they do make sure to reassure everyone that it is certainly a Total War game. They've also introduced the term a Total War Saga to help people understand that it's a spin-off and not a next major title. So any of these kind of flashpoints or mini eras are going to be now known as under the name a Total War Saga. So in terms of core gameplay, nothing is different or whatsoever. It will still be as many playable factions or conquerable territories in the actual campaign map, but it will be focused down to one specific region or country at a very particular point in time, as they mentioned before, whether it will be a few months or a few decades at most. They do then go on to give an example of a previous title which is kind of linked to Total War Sagas, and that would have been Fall of the Samurai. So it was a standalone spin-off from Total War Shogun 2, which focused on a pivotal event of the Boshin War, and it was very concentrated and was set in a short span of time. However, I do believe back then it was a standalone expansion. Now I believe if they made any more titles like this, it would be under the brand a Total War Saga. To talk about the kind of scale of playable territory or land that there will be in the new Total War Saga title, they have mentioned that it's going to be comparable in gameplay size to Total War Attila, but as they have mentioned, focused on a smaller geographical area, and the campaign will take as long to complete as any other Total War title does. So where they've released kind of mini campaigns for previous Total War games, such as Hannibal at the Gates or Age of Charlemagne, it seems that they're working on something as large as Total War Attila to an extent. And so I guess it'll be a size between the two. So you've got this between the size of Age of Charlemagne and Total War Attila. Because although Age of Charlemagne was a fantastic expansion pack, it didn't really seem as big as Total War Attila, and the price point did reflect that too. Also, throughout the blog, they do also talk about table flip moments in history, so where the events are balanced and can go any number of interesting and unique ways, and they believe that that can go very well in with a Total War Saga. So I guess an example would be the Norman invasion, for a start. If the Anglo-Saxons had managed to defeat the Normans, the history of England would be completely different. And the time period around the time was around, I guess about a year from when Harold went to the throne to his death, and the Normans became the rulers of England. So I can see their direction could be quite an interesting one, especially, I would have to say, if it was as limited as a year, then each turn would only have to account for a day. So that'd be quite interesting to see, and it'd be interesting to see how recruitment, etc. would work, because it'd be quite difficult to recruit like a huge army over the matter of like a month or so. So maybe that will really take into account more manpower, how many men you can actually recruit, do you have limited recruitment. So a previous expansion they had for Rome Total War was the Alexander campaign, and that was another kind of, would have fitted in very well with a Total War Saga, in the fact that it was set over the lifespan of Alexander when he kind of rose to the throne to his death after his conquest, and you had to try and recreate his conquests before he would have actually died. So, you know, that is also another kind of era that would fit in really well. They also do go on to say and give more examples as to what would make a decent table flip moment. So that would be such as civil wars, great conquests, rebellions, uprisings, religious movements, as they mention that with Total War traditionally, there's an almost endless list of possible time periods and settings for future Total War Saga games. They didn't actually announce what new title it was going to be, however they did say they will announce it properly in the next few months, and that it will be a spiritual follow-up to Total War Rome 2, like Total War Attila. And it moves the time period forward in much the same way. So what I personally took from that is that the time period between Total War Rome 2 and Total War Attila was around 600 to 700 years. So if we added on another 600 to 700 years from the start of Total War Attila, and that would be 395, that would take it to kind of 900 AD, 1000 AD. So that kind of would almost fit in with the Norman invasion of England and kind of the Anglo-Saxon succession, etc. So that is what my guess that it could be. Of course, there are lots of other possibilities. For example, if it only went forward another 400 years, then you'd have the Viking invasion of England during the period of, there were several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. And while we saw that a little bit with Age of Charlemagne, you did actually have Wessex and Mercia and the Danelaw, etc. That would be an awesome time period, I believe. The Dark Ages is one of my favourite historical periods, so that would be one of my personal favourites. But there are a plethora of different eras that it could be in, especially for it to fit in with the kind of the Total War Attila, the Total War Rome 2 engine and mechanics. I'm sure they'll adapt and change a lot of them in many ways, but I think it's still got to be something that revolves majorly around that kind of warfare with swords, shields, spears, etc. Nothing too modern, especially for the first Total War Saga kind of Flashpoint era. It's unfortunate that we can't get any more details right away. However, I know that on social media, Total War is still getting just tons of comments saying just make historical titles, etc, etc. And I think it's good of them to actually release this information before they're actually ready to show any actual footage. And I think that shows that Total War is still listening to the community. Clearly they are. The fact that they've got a full-size historical Total War in production, and they also have a Flashpoint here, or a new Total War Saga in development, really does show that they're kind of listening to their audience and are giving us what we want, and that's more historical content, because gosh goodly darn, it's only been, I don't know, not even 2 years since the last historical title, but I am already thirsting for another one, and I really can't wait. But please do tell me your thoughts about this, and I'll try and make sure to respond to as many comments as I can. I'm personally very excited. I am someone that gets quite bored playing a huge grand campaign. I don't know why, it's just I think my attention span may have limited since I've got a little bit older. I think it's just time. I lack the time to invest hundreds of hours into a campaign. Now, while they do mention that the maps could be the same size as Total War Attila, I would be perfectly fine with having them a little bit smaller, a little bit more focused, and the fact that they will be focused on particular points in history is great. Especially for me, I think it will hold my attention a lot better. I saw some comments on the Total War Facebook page as to the price point, and the community team responded with that they believe it will be around the same kind of price point as Fall of the Samurai, not a kind of a full title as Total War Attila or Total War Warhammer, etc. Other suggestions could be the War of the Roses, the English Civil War. I know I'm heavily focusing my suggestions around kind of English history. It could be the American War of Independence, the American Civil War. I'm sure there are literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of possible scenarios that Total War could really delve into in great detail. I personally don't know what flashpoints could be for. Actually, no. You know what? The French Revolution could be another one. The possibilities are endless. Obviously, I don't know the history for every country in the world, so if there's a particular flashpoint you think that would suit your country really well, of course, make sure to do that. Let me know in the comments. The War of 1812 is another one. There are tons. There are absolutely tons. It would be. As I'm speaking now, getting more and more excited, and my nose is getting more and more stuffed up. So I'll probably have to wrap this up pretty soon. I did also see a comment on Warrior Sparta's video that the Total War team are kind of selling out and just producing way too much content, and I can kind of see that point of view in the fact that we already have lots of downloadable content for the various titles. However, I don't think they'll be in as much detail as what we're about to get, or will get at some point in the future. So I am fully in support of what Total War seem to be doing, having these kind of saga eras to kind of keep us tided over until we get a new historical title. They didn't go to mention how many they'll produce at a time, or if they'll produce multiple, or how many we'll get every few years. I imagine we'll have to see how successful the first one is before we can really make a judgment on that. I just really hope that the quality and the polish is there upon release. Total War Warhammer, I believe, overall had a great launch and was really polished. I think the only launch that they've had in the past few years that was really, really quite bad was Total War Rome 2. And I think that Sega has recognised that and really does give the Total War team, Creative Assembly as a whole, the backing they need to produce fantastic content. Of course, I'll make sure to give you any more news as I'm able to. Obviously this is going up a bit late, but I've been at work all day, so I can only really record and upload when I'm able to. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and until next time everyone, I bid you a very, very good day! Many thanks to Ivan, Travis, Shag Attack and iSorrows Productions for being ridiculous Rambler supporters on Patreon, and many thanks to all the other patrons too.